Hello there. Today we are going to be talking about editing and testing your scenarios and how you should handle feedback. This is one of the things you're going to need thick skin for as you lay bare your child and have it flayed by the uncaring general public. You always have to bear this in mind as no one really cares about your project more than you do. They can be flippant, they can be argumentative, and at the end of the day, everyone's got an opinion and they're entitled to it. So you have to grin and bear it as they start to poke and prod and rip it open at the seams. You'll have to take this with a pinch of salt and glean what you can from it, and then try and improve your scenario for the better of everyone. To start, first drafts are rough and generally aren't seen by the public. You can give it to a few select people if you wish, but here is your playground to make mistakes, and where it doesn't really matter, plough onward and get to the end. It will mostly change anyway, trust me. You basically just need to give it a pulse and a general structure to the point where you can run the damn thing. Others might look at it and not understand what the hell it's on about. It might look like Sanskrit to them, but to you, you should be able to understand it all and be able to run it smoothly from this first draft. Normally I write anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 words a day if I feel in the mood, but more often I write per scene each day at about 500 to 1,500 words. This averages most scenarios hitting a length of 12 to 15,000 words. So that is where your goal is, and if you're editing as you go, going back again and again and again, you will never get your first draft done. Don't do this. This is not what first drafts are for. After your first draft is done, testing is king. Make sure that your scenario runs smoothly and fold in them loose ends. Find your bottlenecks and the broken plot points. Your players will point them out, no problem at all. This is one of the reasons I set up RPG Nook in the first place, as I wanted people to play my scenarios that I didn't know to see if these actually were good or not. And I would recommend setting up a group yourself and finding players that you trust to give you feedback as you play your own scenarios. This is a kind of a major factor in a lot of scenarios which do actually fall down. They are not play tested at all. It is much like any product you make, the proof is in the pudding. You wouldn't make cake without actually tasting it before you sold it. You wouldn't make a car without test driving it either. And the same goes with scenarios. You need to play your scenarios thoroughly before you actually put them on sale. This will spot all the glaring errors that will come about, and is one of the reasons why I don't review scenarios unless I've played them. It is a very different thing to read something than to actually experience it. After you've tested your scenario, you need to revise your scenario. If you are lucky, like myself, you might have someone who's willing to edit your work for you as well as yourself, and this is something which is very worthwhile. If you can edit someone's work and they can do likewise in return, that is an ideal situation, but do not pay for an editor unless you're very serious and very certain of what you want to do, and it will make the money back. Editors are expensive and usually will cost you a small fortune to go over a decent sized script. Don't do it until you are well established and will know that your scenarios will make money. The scenarios on Mystonic Repository don't bring in a lot of cash. Your profits are split 50-50, and there is little chance of making your money back unless you get lucky or have a huge audience and are quite popular within the industry already. There are a few types of edits that you'll have to go through, and the first one is developmental edits. Do not start editing for spelling and grammar at this level. It is utterly pointless and is a waste of time until the story is set in stone. Developmental edits are the first thing you do. This focuses on plots, clues, structure of your scenario, and you have to make sure there is no flaws and it is in the best possible form before you take on those chores. You will have to challenge your own thinking and look for errors in facts, historical accuracy, and you might add and remove whole events to fix pacing issues at this point as well. You can do this mostly yourself after feedback, but it is well worth having a fresh perspective from a second person as well. Once done, you need to sit down and revise with the developmental edits in mind, and that will be your second draft. Run it a few times and always revisit testing once you've made major changes. As a final test, I would also try and find some outside groups that don't know you and don't know your scenario and play with them as well. This will act as a control group, so you can actually see some genuine responses to your game. They will more than likely either bail out of the game or dislike it straight up. It can hurt your feelings, but that is life. You have to be pretty tough if you want to be a creative. It's all about doing something and expressing your feelings and your emotions and your stories and having someone kick you in the nuts. More than likely, there will be plenty of people that will hate Grave Robbers and 4 Hours to Reno and even Fever Death Toll. That is absolutely fine. They're absolutely entitled to their opinion, and this is what all about putting your stuff out there is about. You're not trying to please everyone, you just need to please enough people to make it viable in a marketplace, and be grateful if even 1 or 2 people like your work. Feedback is only as good as the person giving it, and there are a lot of people that really can't express how they feel and why they dislike or like something. Saying that's crap is not helpful to fix the problem. Generally asking what their favourite and least favourite parts are of the scenario and why is a decent indicator of how you will get some good feedback out of most people. But players should be talking openly about the scenario in conversation afterwards if they actually genuinely enjoyed the scenario. If this doesn't happen, there's generally a problem. It's either boring them or they want to move on and the experience was something they don't want to dwell on or talk about. Even if they don't give any feedback, this is an indicator that your scenario did not stick the landing at all. Feedback is also personal. If you do this many times you're with the same people, you will notice trends in people's feedback. Some might not like a lot of social events, some might not like fast-paced action, some might not like travel scenes, some might not like slow burning build-ups, and some might not knowing what's going on completely. This is their personal tastes coming forward, and you should be wary of these things. Usually you can discard most of these commentaries unless they are reinforced by other people that played the game as well. In that case, it is not their personal feedback, it is a trend of your scenario, and it is something you're going to have to fix. You will have to have that thick skin here and bite the bullet. You need to know what sucks and how to fix it. There is no place for ego here. Don't defend your ideas, accept the criticism and either put it into practice or ignore it. Generally, places you'll find yourself glancing over and not reading are the boring bits, and that's your own opinions coming forward if you are not reading your own scripts in depth. It needs to hold attention or it needs to change. Trust yourself. You're the one writing this and they aren't. The final choice is yours. Once you're pretty happy with the structure, plot and clue chains, you can move into line editing. This is to make your language as clear as possible for the sake of the keeper's sanity, removing extra words, repeating words, punching up the value of the sentences while reducing its word count. Rather than saying something in a paragraph of waffling text, a line edit should reduce that to one clean sentence. This is a bit of an art form, and again, a good editor will help with this, but you will become better at it yourself the more you do it and the more you write. This is where I would employ a text-to-speech app if you are dyslexic, so you can really see the problems in the actual paragraphs. Once you have done your second revised writing up and drafting, you are going to be looking for your final test groups. You want to be running these mostly outside of your own circle, and a few within perhaps, but what you really want to do is get other keepers to run it. That is going to be your next big hurdle, as you are writing this for other people, not yourself, and they need to be able to understand your script and be comfortable with what you're trying to convey to them. There will always be hurdles like word count and the way you want to express yourself and the type of format you use that can all play into parts of people misinterpreting or not understanding completely what you are getting at. I can sometimes fall into this trap as well, and you will see from a lot of my reviews it can happen to everyone who makes a scenario. There's just some disconnects with the intention and the application from the actual keeper themselves. It is like a scriptwriter and a director, if you want to give it a sort of relationship, and you're trying to make that communication as clean as possible. This test will show that up, and you may have to go back and revise again if the keepers cannot understand certain parts of your script. And then, if we get this far, we get to the final draft. This is where you really hate your own scenario. You've read it 100 times, you've had people bicker and complain about it, you've taken it apart and restructured it, and you've had to do the bloody artwork as well. You're sick and tired to the back teeth of seeing this thing, and now you have to go through it with a thin tooth comb and find all the actual basic grammar and spelling mistakes. This is copy editing, people, and this is basically polishing your scenario to a fine gleaming shell. It's a tedious job, and one that requires you to look for the unprofessional little glaring errors and flaws. It is something which is hard to spot for many people, and things always slip through the nets. Look at Chaosium and how they do it. They always release a PDF first to the public. The public comes back and writes up a ton of mistakes on their forum, and then they go and complete them before it goes to print. It's a pretty nice system, but as a company like Chaosium can't get this right 100% of the time, you have no chance of getting your scenario out with no mistakes. But you can damn well try. I would also at this point format your scenario to the Miskatonic repository template in Word and use its spell check as well, as it is superior to any other, unless you're going to stick it into Google search engine, which is surprisingly accurate when it's trying to figure out what I mean. It's almost telepathic at this point for me. And that concludes our editing and testing part 5, and next we'll be looking at part 6, which is going to be layout and trade dress for your actual scenario, making it look a little bit nice and tarting it up so it doesn't look so amateurish perhaps if you wish to take that extra step. You don't have to if you don't want to, and you can just leave it pretty basic and throw it up on Miskatonic repository, but I think it gives you a better chance to grabbing people's attention. And with that, we shall see you in that video. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you again next time.